Growth in a real estate brokerage seems like a straightforward equation. You recruit more agents, you close more deals, and top-line revenue goes up. But beneath that outward success, the back-end infrastructure tells a different story. The systems built to handle your money do not scale at the same predictable rate as your sales. If we map this out, the traditional expectation looks like this: a clean trajectory where administrative effort scales proportionally with incoming revenue. But here is the reality. As transaction volume compounds, the sheer density of data forces the administrative workload to break away from that linear path, curving exponentially upward. This widening gap, the space between the money coming in and the effort required to process it, is the operational danger zone for a scaling business. This mathematical divergence explains why reaching a critical mass of success often feels exactly like the moment operations begin to unravel. The primary catalyst driving this exponential complexity curve is a specific administrative bottleneck: commission reconciliation. In the early days of a brokerage, operators treat commission tracking as a routine accounting chore, a simple matter of dividing cash at the closing table. High-volume reconciliation functions more like a systems engineering challenge than basic bookkeeping, once you factor in the sheer density of nested splits and fees. The core problem is that manual commission tracking architectures possess zero fault tolerance at scale. To survive a period of rapid growth, operators must look under the hood and understand exactly how and why their legacy architecture fails. Let's strip away the noise of a large brokerage and look at the unit economics of a single, isolated deal. A baseline transaction relies on 3 fixed data points: a base sale price, a standard commission percentage, and a static broker-to-agent split. Mapped out, this logic is perfectly clean. A single deal flows in, and the capital splits down the middle. Because the math never changes, the lines flow into their separate outcome buckets without interruption. It requires almost zero administrative oversight. Early-stage brokerages rely entirely on this static logic. It's predictable, easy to calculate, and simple to use for projecting initial cash flow. But this simplicity sets a trap. It instills a false sense of security, tricking operators into believing a basic spreadsheet will work forever. The static model shatters the moment you hire top-tier agents. Elite producers demand customization, which immediately destroys the baseline 50-50 split. First, you introduce referral fees. This siphons off a percentage of the capital before the primary split even occurs, altering the initial pathway. Then you add dynamic commission caps. Now, the system has to track historical agent performance against a moving target, forcing a conditional if-then logic gate into the equation. Next, factor in performance bonuses. This layers yet another variable onto the agent's branch of the payout. Finally, the closing table itself introduces friction. Mid-deal adjustments and seller concessions force their way into the center of the structure, scrambling the previously clean lines. Pull back and look at that single transaction unit now. Burdened by these conditional rules, it no longer resembles a simple split. It is a dense, tangled schematic. Every one of these variables demands manual human intervention to verify that the specific, unique combination of rules has been applied correctly. By the time the deal reaches the back office, the transaction behaves as a highly volatile, multivariable logic event. Now, take that highly volatile logic event and apply it to the reality of brokerage volume. Watch what happens when you multiply that single, tangled circuit by dozens or hundreds of active agents. The traditional containment method for this volume is a standard spreadsheet. We try to force these erratic, multivariable structures into a rigid, grid-based ledger. This exposes a massive architectural mismatch. Static spreadsheet cells are designed to hold uniform data, not to process dynamic conditional logic. When you apply macro rules and static formulas to overlapping edge cases, the architecture fails. The complex logic simply breaks out of the rigid grid. In a deeply interconnected spreadsheet, a single broken cell doesn't stay isolated. It propagates that error across the entire financial ledger, throwing off every calculation downstream. Throwing more accounting staff at the problem does not fix it. You are simply adding more humans to navigate an inherently mismatched architecture. At this volume, the spreadsheet ceases to be a tool of measurement. It actively becomes a bottleneck that chokes operational speed. The immediate operational consequence of systemic spreadsheet failure is latency. Everything slows down. Your back office team is forced into a grueling manual process, hunting down data entry errors row by tedious row. This administrative bottleneck drags out the time between closing a deal and actually issuing a check. That delay carries a heavy psychological impact. Real estate professionals rely on swift liquidity to run their own businesses. When payment schedules become inconsistent, it directly erodes the trust between the agent and the brokerage. Beyond the internal friction, this administrative latency acts as the leading catalyst for losing top-performing agents to competitors. A compromised reconciliation architecture creates a severe blast radius of downstream damage. The primary financial risks are acute: capital leakage through accidental overpayments and legal liability through underpayments. Furthermore, delayed data entry blinds the leadership team. When the ledger isn't current, owners suffer from severe cash flow opacity. This lack of data integrity makes it impossible to generate actionable financial reports. The initial point of manual input failure triggers overpayments, cash flow issues, and agent disputes. Dealing with these compounding risks consumes massive amounts of leadership bandwidth, forcing operators to shift their focus away from growth and entirely onto triage. Relying on legacy systems during high growth creates a self-defeating cycle. The success of scaling actively destroys the operational stability of the business. Every growing brokerage hits a critical threshold of scale, the exact moment they must abandon manual tools if they want to survive. Passing this threshold requires moving away from static spreadsheets and adopting centralized, automated ledger systems. A purpose-built system is designed for this specific complexity. It ingests the variable transaction logic and instantly outputs clean, standardized data streams for accurate payouts and financial reporting. High-performing brokerages view transparent commission management as a sharp competitive advantage rather than a hidden back-office function. Solving the financial operations bottleneck requires upgrading the architecture itself rather than just increasing administrative headcount. A properly engineered backend ensures that business growth actually generates capital opportunity rather than accounting chaos.